Hello and welcome. If you've ever felt like you're stuck in your business, working harder and harder but not actually moving forward, well, you are definitely not alone. Today, we're going to break down a really powerful framework called the Growth Cube. It's a tool designed to cut right through the chaos of growth planning and light up a smarter, much safer path to success.
So here's what we're going to do. We'll start by looking at a very common trap that so many businesses fall into. Then we'll introduce the Growth Cube as the way out. After that, we'll uncover its real secret, something called the spiral, and see it in action with some real companies. And then we'll wrap up by figuring out how you can put all of this to work for you.
All right, first up, let's talk about a feeling that I think a lot of leaders know all too well. This feeling of being completely stuck on the same path, no matter how hard you seem to be working.
Does this sound at all familiar to you? Business leaders often describe it as walking around the same goat track. Where the ruts just get a little bit deeper every single year. You're busy, you're putting in all the hours, but the business itself, it isn't really going anywhere new, is it?
And here's the heart of the problem, right? You're so deep in the day-to-day grind and all the details that there's just no time to think big. But even if you do find a spare moment, you're suddenly faced with this dizzying number of options, and there's no clear way to know which ones will actually work. It's this classic trap where putting out short-term fires always wins over long-term strategy.
So the big question is, how do we break out of this cycle? Well, let's take a look at a tool that's designed for exactly this, to give us a structured, methodical way to think about growth. And this is where the Growth Cube comes in. It was created by Stephen Wood of Roaring Success Proprietary Limited. Now, Stephen's a consultant and author with over 20 years of experience, and he's distilled all that knowledge into his books. This idea actually connects concepts from his work on business tools, strategy, and even B2B selling. So this isn't just theory. It's a really practical tool designed to bring a clear, methodical approach to what is often a very chaotic process.
So the whole framework is built on three simple but really powerful axes of growth. First, you've got your markets. That's all about who your customers are. Then you have your products or services, what you actually sell. And finally, there's your competitive performance, which is really just about how well you operate, how efficient you are at what you already do.
But here's the thing, just having three axes, that isn't the key insight. The original idea was to look at each one of these separately. But the real power, the true revelation, comes from how you navigate them together.
And here is the breakthrough. Instead of tackling these axes all on their own, the real magic happens when you combine them into a sequence. This creates what's called a growth spiral, a journey of action steps that all reinforce each other, and it all starts with the lowest risk actions first, so you can build momentum safely.
This right here is the easiest, fastest, first principle in action. Just look at step 1, penetrate. Before you do anything else, you focus on your current customers. It is 5 to 25 times cheaper than trying to acquire new ones. Then, their feedback helps you find adjacent markets in step 2 and enhance your products in step 3. You see, each step logically and safely builds on the one before it.
This quote from Erwin Rommel just says it all, doesn't it? Time spent in reconnaissance is seldom wasted. Your existing customers, they are your best source of intelligence. They're like your reconnaissance team on the ground. They will tell you what's working, what they need next, and where the real opportunities are, long before you spend a single dollar on some risky new venture.
Okay, so what does this spiral actually look like out in the real world? Let's check out a few examples that show how this isn't just theory, it is a proven path to real growth.
Lucozade is such a classic case of finding an adjacent market. It's the exact same product, but by changing the story. Repositioning it from a recovery aid for sick people to an energy drink for athletes, they tapped into this massive new customer base. And the result? Explosive growth. They didn't have to invent a new drink, they just found a new market for the one they already had.
And you see this pattern everywhere. Ep17, they didn't reinvent the wheel. They just found a new niche vehicle for the parts they already made. That's a perfect adjacent market. Dolphin Products, they didn't launch some brand new product line. They just enhanced one tiny part for a current client and won a ton more business. Every one of these is a smart, calculated step on the spiral, not some giant, risky leap of faith. Now, let's translate this into a financial situation. Let's imagine a company we'll call Brillcom. As you can see, their forecast is falling dangerously short of their target. They have a massive revenue gap that they have to close. So, how do they do it without betting the entire farm?
They use the spiral. Instead of one big, risky moonshot, they build their revenue back piece by piece. Just look at the layers in that final bar. They start by penetrating their existing market. Then, they add an adjacent market, caravans. Then they offer some product modifications. Each one of these early low-risk wins generates the cash and the confidence to fund the bigger moves later on, like new services or expanding into new countries. The gap gets closed systematically, not by some stroke of luck.
So, let's bring this all back to you. How can you use this structured, methodical process to achieve the goals that you really want for yourself, whether it's in your business or even in your career?
If you only remember one thing from all of this, please make it this: easiest, fastest, first. See, growth isn't some perfect, straight line you map out in a boardroom. It's much more like what's been called a drunk man's walk, a series of small, intelligent steps. Each one reduces risk, builds momentum, and helps fund the next, bigger move.
And, this is the real antidote to feeling stuck. It isn't about having a single, brilliant idea that changes everything. It's about the consistency of your activity. This methodical process keeps you moving forward and, just as importantly, it helps you maintain a clear head, especially when things get tricky.
And ultimately, the spiral forces you to start with the people who matter the most, your customers. By focusing first on helping them get what they want, as the great Zig Ziglar said, you build a foundation for success that creates real, sustainable value. And that's not just for you, but for everyone your business touches.
So, I want to leave you with a question to think about. Looking at this spiral, where does your journey need to begin right now? Is it by better serving the customers you already have? Or maybe there's an adjacent market right next door, just waiting for you to knock. Remember, the path to growth isn't a giant leap. It's a single, smart step. What's yours?
Thinking about that very first step? Well, that's the beginning of turning a big, intimidating goal into a real, achievable success. Thanks for joining me today.